Pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. My office window offered a panoramic view of the city, a sprawling testament to the Lancaster name. Lancaster Enterprises, the result of generations of hard work, innovation, and, let's be honest, a little bit of ruthless ambition. It was my legacy, or rather, my responsibility. A responsibility my father had entrusted to me, and one I intended to uphold. I, Ethan Lancaster, was the dutiful son, the responsible older brother, the one who played by the rules, paid his taxes, and always put family first. It wasn't always easy, but it was in my blood. It was what my father expected. Caleb, on the other hand, was different. My younger brother was charming, charismatic, and utterly allergic to hard work. He coasted through life on his good looks and easy charm, always chasing the next thrill, the next quick buck. He envied my success, of course. I could see it in his eyes, that simmering resentment that never quite boiled over. But he never put in the effort to earn it himself. He wanted the crown without the burden of the kingdom. I loved him in my own way, but I also knew his limitations. He was impulsive, reckless, and easily swayed by, well, let's just say he had a weakness for shiny things. And people. Then there was Julia, my wife. Beautiful, intelligent, ambitious. We'd been married for 5 years, and on the surface, we were the perfect couple. Power, wealth, social standing, we had it all. But lately, things had been off. I couldn't quite put my finger on it. A subtle coolness in her demeanor, a fleeting flicker of dissatisfaction in her eyes. She seemed restless, bored, perhaps, as if she was looking for something more than what I could offer. I tried to dismiss it. We were both busy, stressed, juggling demanding careers. It was just a phase, I told myself. We'd work through it. But deep down, a nagging doubt persisted. A sense that something was amiss, that the foundation of our seemingly perfect marriage was beginning to crack. I glanced at the framed photo on my desk, my father, his arm around me, and Caleb, both of us grinning like idiots. A simpler time, a time before legacies and responsibilities and simmering resentments. He'd always said, "Family is everything, Ethan. Protect it. Cherish it. Never let anything come between you." I intended to honor his words. I just didn't realize how soon they would be tested, or how devastating the consequences would be. For what was coming would soon change the game. My marriage would be put to the test, and my inheritance will be turned to ash. Now I must keep in mind that family is everything, that I must ensure my family is okay. The lawyer's office was sterile, impersonal. The air was thick with unspoken tension. The reading of the will. The final act in my father's long and influential life. I sat beside Julia, her hand resting lightly on my arm. Caleb sat opposite us, his face a mask of barely concealed impatience. He kept fidgeting, drumming his fingers on the table, as if he had somewhere more important to be. The lawyer cleared his throat, adjusted his glasses, and began to read. The usual legal jargon, the formal pronouncements, the carefully worded clauses. And then came the bombshell. And to my son, Ethan Lancaster, I bequeath the entirety of Lancaster Enterprises, including all assets, holdings, and real estate. Furthermore, I entrust to him the care and maintenance of the family estate and the preservation of the Lancaster legacy. Silence. A thick, suffocating silence. I glanced at Caleb. His face was a study in barely suppressed rage. His jaw was clenched, his eyes narrowed, his knuckles white as he gripped the armrests of his chair. Julia squeezed my arm, a small, reassuring gesture. "Congratulations, darling," she said, her voice carefully neutral. The lawyer continued reading, outlining a small, relatively insignificant sum left to Caleb. A token gesture, really. A slap in the face disguised as a bequest. "That's it?" Caleb finally exploded, his voice cracking with anger. "That's all I get? After everything I've done for this family? After all the years I've spent—" "Caleb, please," I said, trying to defuse the situation. "Dad had his reasons. I'm sure we can work something out." Work something out? He sneered. You think I want your charity, Ethan? You think I want to beg for scraps from your table? That's not what I meant, I said, my voice rising in frustration. I just want what's best for everyone. We're family, Caleb. We need to stick together. Family, he scoffed. You think we're family? You've always been Dad's favorite, Ethan, the golden boy, the responsible one. You got everything and I got nothing. He glared at me, his eyes burning with resentment. Then he turned to Julia, a strange, almost conspiratorial look on his face. She offered him a small, sympathetic smile. A smile that I didn't quite understand. A smile that sent a chill down my spine. Don't worry, Caleb, she said, her voice soft and soothing. We'll figure something out. We always do. The cracks were widening. The resentment was bubbling to the surface. And I, blind to the machinations unfolding around me, was about to walk straight into a trap. But the true test hasn't even arrived. Now it is the part that truly matters. What are we going to do as we move along? And how are we going to fix things as we go? I could not imagine what was happening with them. The game has only just begun, I whispered to myself. Late nights in my study had always been a sanctuary, surrounded by books, family heirlooms, and the comforting scent of aged leather. I felt a sense of peace and purpose. Tonight, however, the atmosphere was different. Strained. Caleb and Julia sat across from me, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of the desk lamp. They had insisted on this meeting, claiming it was urgent. Something about securing Julia's future, ensuring her well-being in case anything happened to me. It's just a formality, Ethan, Caleb said, his voice smooth and reassuring. A simple trust. Ensures Julia's taken care of, no matter what. Julia nodded, her eyes filled with what I thought was concern. It would give me such peace of mind, darling, knowing I'd be protected. I hesitated. Something felt off. I don't know, guys, I said, running a hand through my hair. Dad's will was pretty clear. I intend to honor his wishes. Of course you do, Caleb interjected, his tone a bit too forceful. But this doesn't change anything. It just adds an extra layer of security. For Julia. He slid a thick document across the desk. The trust document. I picked it up, my eyes scanning the dense legal jargon. Do I really need this? I asked, a knot forming in my stomach. It seems complicated. It's standard procedure, Ethan, Julia said, her voice soft and persuasive. Just a safeguard. Think of it as insurance. They were both watching me, their expressions carefully neutral. But I could sense the pressure, the unspoken expectation. I sighed. I trusted them. They were my family. Why would they steer me wrong? All right, I said, picking up a pen, but I should probably have Mr. Harrison look this over before I sign, right? No need, Caleb said quickly. He's out of town and he probably won't be back for a while. We have to do this now or we won't be able to pay rent by next month. I hesitated. I wanted to get this over with. Okay, let's get this over with. I skimmed the document, skipping over the finer details. Big mistake. Huge. I signed on the dotted line, sealing my fate with a careless stroke of the pen. As I handed the document back to Caleb, he grinned. You're the best brother ever, Ethan. I just nodded, a vague unease settling over me. I've done something terrible, as the dread was starting to set in. I'd just signed away everything. The storm broke several weeks later. The Lancaster mansion, once a symbol of family and tradition, became the stage for my personal tragedy. I walked into the living room to find Julia packing her bags. Suitcases lay open on the floor, overflowing with clothes and personal belongings. What's going on? I asked, my voice tight. She turned to face me, her expression cold and detached. I'm leaving, Ethan. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Leaving? What are you talking about? Where are you going? I was offered a promotion and I'm going to take it, she replied. With who, Julia? I roared. Don't lie, please, I am begging you. Fine, it's Caleb. Before I could say anything else, Caleb walked into the room, a smug expression on his face. He put his arm around Julia. "She's with me, Ethan. She is my partner." I stared at them, my mind reeling. You're having an affair?" Julia nodded, her eyes devoid of emotion. "I'm sorry, Ethan, but I can't do this anymore. You're too boring, too predictable. I need someone who can offer me more." "More what?" I said. "Is this about the money, the company?" "I don't know what that is. What are you even on about?" replied Julia. Caleb chuckled. "Everything's changed, Ethan. We've got the document that you signed, so now the money is with us. Everything is ours now." My blood ran cold. The trust document. The fine print I hadn't read. "Get out," I managed to choke out, my voice trembling with rage. "Get out of my house." Caleb laughed. "This isn't your house anymore, Ethan. It's mine. Read the fine print." He gestured towards the door. "Security." Two burly men appeared, their faces grim. "Escort Mr. Lancaster off the property," Caleb ordered. I stood there frozen as they approached me. Humiliation washed over me, a tidal wave of shame and anger. "You haven't won, Caleb," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "This isn't over. You'll regret this, both of you." Caleb just smirked. "Enjoy being poor, Ethan." As they dragged me towards the door, I looked back at Julia. Her face was unreadable. I wondered if she felt any remorse, any regret. But all I saw was a cold, empty void. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to maintain a composed facade. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. I walked out of the Lancaster mansion, stripped of my wife, my inheritance, and my family's legacy. But as I stepped out into the night, a spark ignited within me. A spark of determination. A spark of revenge. They thought they had won. They thought they had outsmarted me. But they had underestimated one thing. Ethan Lancaster never gives up. And they would soon learn that the fine print cuts both ways. As for the contract, well, that's for me to know and for them to find out. It was time for me to learn what I was truly capable of, and the new Ethan Lancaster would be more devious than ever, as this time I will not be as generous as what they have seen. And just maybe I can find someone that values me, as a person, not what they can gain. For now, though, let's make them as miserable as possible. The news spread like wildfire. Lancaster heir loses fortune to brother and wife in shocking betrayal. Ethan Lancaster outsmarted by younger sibling. Love lies and lawsuits. A family feud turns ugly. The headlines screamed from every newsstand, every website, every social media feed. The story was irresistible. A wealthy, successful businessman brought down by the treachery of his own family. The public ate it up. I became a punchline, a cautionary tale, a symbol of naivete and gullibility. "Poor Ethan," they clucked. "So trusting, so stupid." Caleb and Julia, of course, lapped up the attention. They gave interviews, posed for photos, and reveled in their newfound celebrity. They were the new power couple, the Bonnie and Clyde of the business world. "We just wanted what was fair," Caleb declared, his voice dripping with false sincerity. "Ethan was hoarding everything. We just wanted a piece of the pie." Julia, ever the picture of elegance and sophistication, added her own spin. "Ethan was so focused on the company, he forgot about me. I needed someone who could offer me more than just board meetings and balance sheets." They threw lavish parties, inviting the city's elite to celebrate their triumph. Champagne flowed, caviar was consumed, and the air was thick with schadenfreude. They were living the high life, rubbing my nose in their success. I watched it all from a distance, my internal monologue a constant stream of sarcasm and simmering anger. "Oh, very classy, Caleb. Nothing says I'm a self-made man like stealing your brother's company and throwing a party to celebrate." The constant media coverage was suffocating. I couldn't go anywhere without being recognized, without being subjected to whispers and stares. I retreated into myself, isolating myself from the world. But I wasn't idle. I was plotting, planning, biding my time. That's when I met Amelia Stone, a sharp, tenacious lawyer with a reputation for taking on impossible cases and winning. She saw something in me, a spark of resilience beneath the layers of defeat. "Mr. Lancaster," she said, her voice brisk and professional. "I've reviewed the trust document. There's a clause, a loophole." Hope flickered within me, a tiny flame in the darkness. A loophole? What kind of loophole? A clause stating that the trust will be nullified if Caleb Lancaster engages in any fraudulent activity regarding the document. My eyes widened. Fraudulent activity? What are you talking about? Forgery, Mr. Lancaster. The signatures on this document appear to be inconsistent. We can prove that there's fraudulent activity, and you will win. A slow smile spread across my face. It was time to put my revenge plan into motion and start turning the table. But first, I needed to plan. The game was about to change. Caleb's office was everything mine had been, only tackier. The same panoramic view, the same expensive furniture, but with a distinct lack of taste. Gaudy artwork, ostentatious displays of wealth, a general sense of new money. He did not have the same subtle air of class and superiority that my office had. He sat behind my old desk, now his desk, sweating and looking generally flustered. Things, it seemed, weren't going as smoothly as he had planned. "What do you mean, the transaction was declined?" He barked into the phone, his face turning red. "I need those funds transferred immediately. I'm Caleb Lancaster. I own this damn company." He slammed the phone down, glaring at Julia, who was perched on the edge of the desk, her expression a mixture of concern and suspicion. "What's going on, Caleb?" she asked, her voice tight. "You promised me this would be easy. You promised me we'd be living the high life." "It is easy," Caleb snapped. "It's just a minor glitch, some stupid paperwork. I'll get it sorted out." But the minor glitch persisted. He tried to purchase a new yacht, denied. He tried to invest in a high-profile real estate deal, blocked. He tried to withdraw a large sum of cash, flagged. His access was restricted. His empire was crumbling, and he didn't know why. I, of course, knew exactly why. Amelia Stone had been quietly working behind the scenes, alerting the banks, the investors, and the authorities to the potential fraud. The noose was tightening. At a board meeting, Caleb tried to push through a series of questionable financial decisions. The board members, now wary of his leadership, pushed back. "I don't think so," said Mr. Thompson. Thompson was a shady accountant, not one who always played by the book. He knows what Caleb is doing, and he's going to make sure that the others find out as well. "I think there's an awful lot we are not finding out, that we should know." "Yeah, where's our trust for you?" shouted board member Mrs. Johnson. "I trusted you, Caleb, not anymore." Board members started nodding in agreement, starting to disagree with the new decisions that Caleb was making. "What is this, a mutiny?" Caleb sneered, his face flushed with anger. "I'm the CEO. You work for me. I make the decisions." "Not anymore, you don't," said another man, an older gentleman. "We are not sure where all of this is going." Caleb stormed out of the meeting, his frustration boiling over. He was losing control, and Julia was starting to panic. "What's happening, Caleb? We were so happy, so confident, and now this." Julia started as he turned to her in a huff. "We can still fix this," Caleb spat. "I won't give up. Just give me some time." They were introduced with another character in this chapter, Mr. Harrison. This lawyer warned him that his financial troubles may lead to criminal charges, and that his actions will be on record. The pressure was building, the unease was growing, and the cracks in their ill-gotten empire were about to widen into gaping chasms. But for now, I'm going to make it a bit more difficult. It was time for the final act. Amelia Stone's office was the antithesis of the Lancaster Enterprises boardroom. Small, cluttered, and filled with stacks of legal documents threatening to topple over at any moment. It was a stark reminder that I wasn't in control anymore. I was relying on someone else, on a system I no longer trusted. Yet, strangely, it was also a place of hope. "I've gone over the trust document with a fine-tooth comb, Mr. Lancaster," Amelia said, her voice crisp and efficient, "and I believe we have something." She gestured towards a paragraph buried deep within the document. a dense block of legal jargon that had probably glazed over my eyes the first time I'd skimmed it. Clause 17b, subsection 4, she read, her finger tracing the lines. In the event that Caleb Lancaster engages in any act of fraud, misrepresentation, or unlawful conduct related to the execution or administration of this trust, all rights, titles, and interests conveyed herein shall automatically revert to Ethan Lancaster. I stared at the words, my mind struggling to comprehend their implications. Fraud? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. You mean, if Caleb committed fraud, I can get everything back? Amelia nodded, a grim smile playing on her lips. Precisely. It's a standard clause, designed to protect the grantor's assets from mismanagement or malfeasance. Your father was a shrewd man, Mr. Lancaster. He anticipated contingencies. But how can we prove Caleb committed fraud? I asked, my hope tempered with skepticism. He's got all the power, all the resources. He'll deny everything. Amelia leaned back in her chair, her eyes gleaming. That's where we come in. I've hired a forensic handwriting expert. He believes the signatures on the document, specifically your signature, are inconsistent. I sat up straight, my heart pounding. Inconsistent? You mean forged? Highly likely. The expert's preliminary findings suggest that your signature was traced or copied. We need to obtain irrefutable proof. This was it. My chance. A path to reclaiming what had been stolen from me. We spent the next few weeks gathering evidence, subpoenaing witnesses, poring over bank records, and tracking down anyone who could corroborate our story. It was a slow, painstaking process, but Amelia was relentless. She was a bulldog, sinking her teeth into the case and refusing to let go. Finally, we had enough. A signed affidavit from a former employee of Caleb's, detailing his attempts to pressure her into forging documents. Testimony from the handwriting expert, confirming that my signature on the trust document was indeed a fake, and a mountain of circumstantial evidence pointing to Caleb and Julia's conspiracy. It's time, Amelia said, her voice ringing with confidence. We call the board meeting. Hope surged through me, a powerful current washing away the bitterness and despair. I saw a path forward, the light at the end of the tunnel. My rebirth was happening. Let's show them the fine print, I said. The smile that had been missing for a long time was slowly starting to make its reappearance. It was time, and they would find out that they can't simply walk all over me as if I was nothing more than a pushover. Oh, how the tables have turned. The Lancaster Enterprises boardroom felt different this time. The air wasn't just thick with tension. It was charged with anticipation. The board members sat around the mahogany table, their faces a mixture of curiosity, unease, and barely concealed excitement. They knew something was up. Caleb, perched at the head of the table, radiated false confidence. He glanced at me with a dismissive smirk, clearly underestimating the strength of my hand. Julia, seated beside him, fidgeted nervously, her eyes darting around the room. "All right, Ethan," Caleb said, his voice dripping with condescension. "What's this all about? I'm a busy man. I don't have time for your petty grievances." I stood up, my gaze sweeping across the room. "This isn't about petty grievances, Caleb. This is about justice. This is about reclaiming what's rightfully mine." I nodded to Amelia, who stepped forward and distributed copies of the legal documents to each board member. "What is this?" Caleb asked, his voice laced with annoyance. "Some kind of pathetic attempt to discredit me?" I ignored him, focusing on the board members' faces as they read the documents. Their eyes widened, their expressions shifting from curiosity to shock. "This document here," I said, pointing to the trust document, "is fake." Julia shifted and gulped as she sat down. I could see the fear setting in, the fear of being discovered. "Everything that you have been giving credit for has now been given to fraud." "I find myself agreeing," said Mr. Thompson. Thompson was a shady accountant, not one who always played by the book. He knows what Caleb is doing, and he's going to make sure that the others find out as well. He's too reckless, does not see the signs of warning, and is costing us millions. "Yeah, where's our trust for you?" shouted board member Mrs. Johnson. "I trusted you, Caleb. Not anymore." Caleb slammed his fist on the table, his face turning red. "This is ridiculous. These are lies, fabrications." "The only lie here, Caleb," Amelia said, her voice sharp, "is the signature on this document. Our handwriting expert has confirmed that it's a forgery." She presented the expert's report, along with the signed affidavit from Caleb's former employee. The board members murmured amongst themselves, their eyes fixed on the evidence. "This is outrageous!" Caleb shouted, his voice cracking with desperation. "This is a conspiracy. They're trying to steal my company." The game was up, and everyone knew it. "It seems we have no other choice, Mr. Lancaster," one of the board members said, his voice firm. "We must vote on whether or not to remove Caleb Lancaster as CEO of Lancaster Enterprises." The vote was swift and unanimous. Caleb was out. A wave of triumph washed over me, a sense of vindication I had never experienced before. I had done it. I had reclaimed my company. But beneath the triumph, a touch of melancholy lingered. The betrayal had left a deep scar, a wound that might never fully heal. My own brother, Caleb, started screaming and shouting about how he did nothing wrong, and that this must be an evil scheme that has been planned against him. I simply ignored it and let security escort him out of the building. Security took Julia's arm as well and started escorting her out as well. She turned back to me, and this time, I felt nothing. There was no remorse. There was no sadness. There was nothing more than simple indifference. I have now fully cut ties with everyone that was involved with my betrayal, and I did not feel 1 ounce of sadness. As I sat at the head of the table, the CEO of Lancaster Enterprises once again, I knew that I would never be the same. The experience had changed me, hardened me. I was no longer the trusting, naive Ethan Lancaster that had walked out of this building a few months ago. This time, I won. I have become a new person, and this can finally be a rebirth, not only for me, but for this company. I will now continue to work hard and make this company thrive. One day, Caleb was on top of the world. The next, it all came crashing down. It happened fast, brutally fast. 1 minute, he was barking orders, signing checks, and basking in the glow of success. The next, the world had frozen around him. First came the bank accounts. "Insufficient funds," the teller said, her voice barely audible above the sterile hum of the bank. "I'm sorry, sir, but the transaction has been declined." Caleb stared at the slip of paper, his face incredulous. "There must be some mistake," he sputtered. "I'm Caleb Lancaster. I have millions in this account." The teller just shrugged, her eyes cold and indifferent. "I'm afraid there's nothing I can do, sir. You'll have to speak to your account manager." Then came the credit cards. Declined at a fancy restaurant. Declined at a high-end boutique. Declined even at the gas station. Caleb was used to flashing his black card and getting whatever he wanted. Now he couldn't even fill up his tank. His mansion, the one that had once been my mansion, was next. A team of lawyers arrived, armed with a court order and a posse of movers. They emptied the house, stripping it bare of its furniture, its artwork, its trappings of wealth. Julia watched in horror as her carefully curated world was dismantled piece by piece. Her designer dresses, her expensive jewelry, her priceless antiques, all gone, carted away in unmarked vans. "What's happening, Caleb?" she shrieked, her voice hysterical. "What did you do?" Caleb just stood there, paralyzed, unable to comprehend the speed and ferocity of his downfall. He'd been so busy celebrating his victory, so blinded by his own arrogance, that he hadn't seen the iceberg looming in the distance. The iceberg named Ethan Lancaster. His office at Lancaster Enterprises was the final blow. He arrived to find his belongings packed in boxes, his access card deactivated, and a security guard waiting to escort him off the premises. The guard just raised an eyebrow and told him not to resist. He responded with compliance, but it was filled with a mix of hatred, sadness, and confusion. The board meetings, the business ventures, all of those are now over. "This is a mistake," he protested, his voice cracking with desperation. "I'm the CEO. I run this company." Not anymore, Mr. Lancaster, the security guard said, his tone firm. Mr. Lancaster called, and the police are on the way to escort you out of the building. Please do not resist. As he walked out of the building, stripped of his power, his wealth, and his dignity, Caleb finally understood the true meaning of the fine print. It wasn't just about the legal loopholes or the hidden clauses. It was about the consequences of his actions, the price he had to pay for his greed and his betrayal. But now, who was there to catch him? He was all alone, and that was all that mattered. Julia was soon going to leave, and nobody would be on his side. And it was time for the other party, Julia, to feel the full brunt of that mistake. With the opulence gone, their once gleaming mansion now felt cold and empty. Stripped of its expensive furnishings and designer decor, it was just a house, a shell, and Julia was trapped inside, rattling around like a pea in a pod. She tried to put on a brave face, telling her friends and acquaintances that she and Caleb were scaling back, focusing on what really matters, and pursuing a simpler life. She used phrases like conscious consumption and minimalist living, hoping to spin their financial ruin into a trendy lifestyle choice. But nobody bought it. The invitations to exclusive parties dried up. Her phone stopped ringing. Her social media feed, once a curated collection of glamorous selfies and aspirational travel photos, became a wasteland of empty platitudes and desperate pleas for attention. She tried to blame Caleb, painting herself as the innocent victim of his recklessness and greed. "I had no idea what he was doing," she sobbed to anyone who would listen. "I was just a pawn in his game. He manipulated me, he used me." There's some sort of emotional connection with the word use. It was as if Julia was getting her karma for using Ethan to climb up the social ladder. It was as if it was a lesson to her, one she would not soon forget. But even her most sympathetic friends started to see through her act. They remembered her laughter, her complicity, her gleeful participation in Caleb's triumph. They remembered her cutting remarks about Ethan, her blatant materialism, her unwavering ambition. Ethan was now made fully aware of all of this information. I was the only thing that could stop this from happening. But here we are. This, what the karma train has led up to. As someone who has always tried to do the right thing, I can only stand back and watch the fires rage and burn. The phone buzzes, and it was from Amelia. A screenshot of Julia's Instagram, as the comments section was being bombarded by the statement, "Where is Ethan?" Another buzz, another picture. The media was having a field day about what was happening. I sighed and simply put my head down to continue working. Julia, it seemed, was now truly and utterly alone. The only thing that I felt with the information was apathy. The train of emotion was long gone, and I still needed to find a way to make her life even more miserable. But maybe she was a lost cause, and for now, the fine print has to win. Let's just see if the power of the fine print can change and make a real difference. The Lancaster Enterprises Annual Gala, a glittering spectacle of wealth, power, and carefully constructed facades. It was my event, a celebration of my company, my success, my legacy. And this year, it felt particularly sweet. The character transformation was complete. The ballroom shimmered with crystal chandeliers, the air thrummed with the polite chatter of the city's elite, and the scent of expensive perfume mingled with the aroma of gourmet cuisine. It was a scene I knew well, a world I had once taken for granted. I made my entrance, dressed in a tailored tuxedo that screamed, "I'm back, bitches." I had spent a lot of time figuring out what to wear and to ensure that I make a statement like no other. And I will make sure that the world will know I am not the same pathetic person as before. But I did make sure not to wear anything too tacky. But I wasn't alone. Beside me walked Amelia Stone, my legal advisor, my confidant, and now, my partner. She looked stunning in a sleek crimson gown, her dark hair cascading down her shoulders. She was power incarnate, radiating confidence and intelligence. And she loved the taste of revenge. "Ready to make an entrance, Mr. Lancaster?" she asked, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "Born ready, Miss Stone," I replied, a slow smile spreading across my face. As we entered the ballroom, all eyes turned to us. A hush fell over the crowd as people registered my presence, then Amelia's. Whispers rippled through the room. The prodigal son had returned. And he wasn't alone. Then I caught sight of them. Caleb and Julia. They were standing near the entrance, looking lost and out of place. Caleb was wearing a rumpled suit that was clearly several sizes too big, and Julia was clinging to his arm, her face a mask of forced cheerfulness. It was almost pathetic. Their presence was a desperate attempt to maintain appearances, to cling to the remnants of their former glory. They wanted to show the world that they were still relevant, that they hadn't been completely destroyed. But the truth was written all over their faces. Defeat, humiliation, irrelevance. As I walked past them, I felt a surge of satisfaction. They thought they could steal my life, my company, my wife. They thought they could outsmart me, humiliate me, and get away with it. But they were wrong. They had underestimated my resilience, my intelligence, and my capacity for revenge. The look on their faces was more than enough. I started with the description of their actions. They thought they could destroy, just like that with a snap of the fingers. Tonight the world saw who really won. Tonight the world would know that revenge is one dish best served cold. That's all. People were simply destined to see what was happening. And who was I to argue with whatever would happen to them? The rebirth was complete, and they could do nothing about it. As I made my way through the crowd, greeting old friends, schmoozing with potential investors, and basking in the adulation, I sensed someone approaching me. I turned to see Julia, her eyes pleading, her face etched with desperation. "Ethan, can we talk?" she asked, her voice barely audible above the music. I hesitated. I wanted to dismiss her, to ignore her, to pretend she didn't exist. But a part of me, a small, foolish part, still wanted to hear what she had to say. I led her to a quiet corner of the ballroom, away from the prying eyes of the crowd. "What do you want, Julia?" I asked, my voice cold and indifferent. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry," she said, her eyes filling with tears. "For everything. For what I did to you. For what I said. It was all a mistake. Caleb manipulated me. I didn't know what I was doing." "Spare me the sob story, Julia," I said, my voice hardening. "You made your choices. You betrayed me. You can't rewrite the past." I know," she sobbed. "But I regret it, Ethan. I really do. I was so foolish, so blinded by ambition. I didn't realize what I had until it was gone." She reached out and touched my arm, her fingers trembling. "We could start over, Ethan. We could forget about everything that happened. We could—" I pulled away, recoiling from her touch. "Don't," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "Don't even think about it. There is nothing to be rebuilt and nothing to look back on." The power of the words had simply overwhelmed Julia, as she could no longer put together what has been happening. All she could do was cry, all alone. "I made a mistake," she whispered. "Oh, I know. You should have read the fine print. It wasn't just a line. It was a symbol. The closure. It was the satisfaction, the understanding. I need to take control of the company," I continued. "And to do that, I need to cut all ties, which includes you as well. But I know for a fact this conversation is also useless. I will not be going back and will want to see you again. Is that understood?" I turned and walked away, leaving Julia standing there, alone and humiliated. She looked as pathetic as could be. She never had real strength. She had been nothing more than a leech, and she would get her comeuppance. As I rejoined Amelia, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in months. The past was behind me. The revenge was complete, and I was free to move on with my life. But I'm not going to move on just yet. They still have a lot more to pay. Let the rebirth truly begin. As now the game has truly changed. As now they know that they can never win against the power of time, money, and planning. La Belle Époque. The name itself whispered of romance, of elegance, of a bygone era of beauty and sophistication. The restaurant was tucked away on a quiet side street, far from the hustle and bustle of the city. Inside, soft lighting, plush velvet seating, and the gentle strains of a live jazz trio created an atmosphere of intimate luxury. It was a world away from the boardrooms, the legal battles, and the bitter memories that had consumed my life for so long. I was meeting Amelia for lunch. Not for a business lunch, not for a strategy session, but for a date. It was a strange feeling, this hope. It had been so long since I'd allowed myself to feel anything other than anger and resentment. But Amelia had chipped away at my defenses, had shown me that it was possible to find happiness again. I saw her walk in, and a slow smile spread across my face. She looked radiant, her eyes sparkling with intelligence and warmth. She wore a simple but elegant dress that accentuated her curves, and her dark hair was pulled back in a sophisticated chignon. She exuded confidence and grace, a woman who knew her worth and wasn't afraid to show it. She also looks as if she is ready to make me a man that has never existed before. "Sorry I'm late," she said, her voice soft. "I got caught up in a minor legal skirmish." I chuckled. "Sounds like you, always fighting the good fight." She grinned. "Someone has to. Besides, it's good practice. You never know when you might need a skilled litigator on your arm." We laughed, and the tension in the room seemed to dissipate. We ordered lunch, and the conversation flowed easily, naturally. We talked about our lives, our passions, our hopes for the future. I learned that Amelia was a fierce advocate for social justice, dedicating much of her free time to pro bono work. She was passionate about helping the less fortunate, about fighting for equality, about making the world a better place. I told her about my plans for Lancaster Enterprises, my vision for a company that not only generated profits, but also made a positive impact on the community. We had very similar mindsets, which was a new and welcome surprise. "You know," she said, her eyes twinkling, "I never thought I'd find myself falling for a corporate tycoon." "And I never thought I'd find myself falling for a crusading lawyer," I replied, reaching across the table to take her hand. Her skin was soft, her touch gentle, and as I looked into her eyes, I knew that something special was happening. It was as if my life was moving forward in a good direction. Later, as we strolled through the park, hand in hand, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in years. The anger, the resentment, the bitterness, it was all fading away. I was finally free, finally happy, finally in love. And I was finally, truly content. The new light for my life was slowly becoming more and more bright, as all of that pain and anguish has subsided. It was as if all of this was worth it. If I hadn't felt betrayed, I wouldn't have been here, and I was happy. The phone rang, shattering the afternoon calm. I glanced at the caller ID. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer it. "Ethan Lancaster speaking?" I said, my voice brisk and professional. A pause, then a hesitant voice on the other end. "Ethan, it's me, Julia." My blood ran cold. After all this time, after everything that had happened, she still had the audacity to call me? "What do you want, Julia?" I asked, my voice devoid of warmth. I just wanted to say, I miss you," she sobbed. "I know I made a mistake, a terrible mistake. I regret everything. Can we please see each other? I want to talk about what happened and to have our friendship be rekindled again." I clenched my fist, struggling to contain my anger. "You miss me? You regret everything? You stole my life, Julia. You betrayed me in the worst possible way. You have no idea what you have done to me." "But Caleb says sorry for what happened, and I know it too," she screamed. "I hope that this new information has changed your mind because I am here to rebuild." "I appreciate the sentiment," I said, my voice as cold as ice. "But I do not care about what happened. All I need is for you to no longer call me or to meet each other. You have no idea how dangerous these actions are. I hope that this is enough to stop you." "What if I have something to tell you about Caleb, about his business secrets?" She responded back as if her life depended on it. "But you still have something I want." I sighed, my patience wearing thin. Get over yourself, Julia. You are irrelevant to me now. I've moved on. I'm happy. And I have something more important with what I want to do right now. Why can't you do the same thing to me? She ended with a sob. Because I'm not the person you see me as. I'm happy with where I am, with what I have done. I truly do not understand the feelings that you possess, and as such, I will never be able to comprehend why you are even calling me. But this has to come to an end. I hung up the phone, cutting off her desperate pleas. I stared at the receiver, my hand trembling. Please never call this number again, Julia. It was done. The final nail in the coffin. I had severed all ties to the past, to the pain, to the betrayal. It's the next step in my rebirth. I am now at peace and can finally rest. The phone rang, and the notification was from a new block number. I simply ignored it. The rest will simply take care of itself. From now, I can finally look forward to a better day. I then started working on my work. A new passion has been kindled as the weight of all the bad things started to fade away. The new beginning was coming. The love, the happiness, the wealth that I've always sought. But for now, it was time to simply keep going. The end of my rebirth was coming, and I was very excited. But now it was time to simply relax and let the days go by. A new chapter has now been opened. The future is looking bright. The game will change one last time, as the curtains were about to close. But that does not mean the fun is going to come to an end. The greatest gift I have ever received was simply being able to experience all of this. I am grateful. And it was truly a pleasure to work at this firm once again. I could not have asked for anything more. The cycle of rebirth has now come to a start.